Hey everyone, and welcome as we continue our study through the New Testament, looking at the church and how the church looked and what how the church formed and the letters that were written to the church and the issues that they had. And so today we're still in James. This is a book that James wrote to the early Christians who were persecuted, and so we're in James 3:13 through 18, and we're still looking here at just the advice and counsel that James is giving to the early church. And this one, this section is titled "True Wisdom Comes from God," and this is James 13 through 18. It's a shorter version, not real long, and so we'll look at that today. Starting in James 3 verse 13, if you are wise and understands God's ways, prove it by living an honorable life, doing good works with the humility that comes from wisdom. But if you are bitterly jealous and there is selfish ambition in your heart, don't cover up the truth with the boasting and lying. For jealousy and selfishness are not God's kind of wisdom. Such things are earthly, unspiritual, and demonic. Really need to pay attention to this, right? And I'll finish this. For wherever there is a jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and evil of every kind. And I want to touch on this a little bit before I even go to my notes, because this is true no matter where you're at, right? I've seen this. I'm sure everyone has seen this. Is where when you have people who are bitterly jealous, and there's this selfish ambition of, like, I'm jealous of the people around me, of someone who might be better than me, and then you have your own selfish ambition right in your heart, like, I'm going to do what's best for me. I'm not going to look out for the organization. I'm not going to look out for anyone around me. I'm looking out for myself and what I want. That's not from God. And if you see that in an organization, it doesn't matter if it's a church. If you see that in the people around you, you need to get away from that. And because this is, James finishes this off, says, wherever there is jealousy and selfish ambition, there you will find disorder and every kind of evil. And that is true. I have seen that. I'm not just talking about churches. I've seen that in the church. I've seen that in businesses, right? I've seen that in organizations where when you have people that are like that, they'll go about and do everything they can, they all but destroy the company, all but destroy the church, just to get what they want. And so we have to be very, very careful not to do this. And why, right? Why would, because if we're doing this, what are people from the outside going to see? Right? They see someone doing something, especially if we're talking about in a religious context, what if they see the jealousy and selfish ambition and people, disorder and evil of every kind, right? Um, in the church, what are the people from the outside? They're going to see that and be like, I don't want anything to do with that. And so we've got to make sure we do it. Now, we're not going to be perfect, right? We're human. We're going to have times where we're jealous. We're going to have times. I mean, I'll be honest. I'm a very ambitious person, and so I've got to be very careful with how I do things, and be very careful about not, like, overstepping and pushing too hard, or like trying to let it be my way or the highway. I've got to be very careful with that. And so when we look at this and we see all this, we've got to be very, very careful with how we do this. But if we're doing this purposely, like if we see people doing this purposely, man, you run from it. I'm telling you, run from it, because you do not want to get sucked up into that. I've been in those meetings. I've been in that environment, and it's just hard to be in that. And so we as Christians have to work to not be like this. And so I'm sorry, let's finish this and we'll get into the notes. Verse 17, but the wisdom from above is first of all pure. It is also peace loving, gentle at all times, and willing to yield to others. It's the exact opposite of what we were just talking about in the previous. It is full of mercy and the fruit of good deeds. It shows no favoritism and is always sincere. And those who are peacemakers will plant seeds of peace and reap a harvest of righteousness. And so it's showing the contrast between the two here, right? If you're in an organization, or you are as a person, all right, are selfish, conceited, you're just worried about yourself, and like, if anyone around you is better than you, you're jealous of them and you try to bring them down, like, that's going to destroy, right? That's not going to plant. You're not going to plant anything, right? Those maybe seeds of discord, but I mean, you're not going to, like, reap a harvest of righteousness, right? That's not going to grow. That's not going to be healthy. And so what James is saying, if we do this, but the wisdom of above is pure. If we're pure, we love peace, right? We're peaceful. We're gentle at all times, and we yield to each other, right? We give in. It's like, I'm not going to be jealous of you because you're better at me than this, or all these things. That's what we're called to, and that's what we see there. It's like the fruit of good deeds. and we're not going to show favoritism, and we're going to be sincere and peacemakers, then man, that's going to be something that's going to grow, and you're going to reap a harvest of righteousness, and you're going to see growth that comes out of that. And so that's what Jesus and James here calls us to as the church, to do these things. And so to get into the nuts, I know I've already talked a little bit, but I wanted to hit on those, like, see that contrast between the two. And so what James is saying here is that wisdom is not just intellectual, right? There's a lot of people who claim to be wise in the church. And when I say claim to be, and a lot of times we'll say, oh, well, they're older. They've been a Christian for a long time, so they're really wise or mature. And it's like, but then you watch their behavior. And it's like, okay, maybe they're not. Maybe they're not. And so he's saying it's not just intellectual. I know people, well, we know the devil, right, is very intellectual when it comes to knowing things. But how's his behavior? Is the wisdom of God from him by his favor? No. And so I've seen that in a lot of Christians where, they've been Christians for a long time. And they've 30, 40 years. But you look at their behavior and they're mean and they're hateful, right? And they talk down to people. And or they're just rude, or they cause problems. Like it's like their goal in life is to go and cause issues or stir up trouble. Well, that's not biblical wisdom, biblical behavior. And so we need to make sure that what James is saying. Hey, if you want to show that you're wise, you've got to prove it through your behavior. And so I say, have you ever known someone who's claimed to be wise, but they just act foolishly? And we've seen that a lot. And so we've got to be careful. We're not perfect. We're not going to be perfect, but we can't not just be who we're supposed to be as Christians and ignore that. We need to call that out. So true wisdom can be measured by a person's character, right? If someone is truly wise, then they're going to have really good character. And that's the thing. And sometimes that's something that we're missing a lot of it is character. And because character doesn't seem to be looked at as this wonderful thing much anymore. And we've got to prove who we are by our character. And again, I'll be honest with you, like, sticking to your character, trying to be that wise and proving your character, it's going to be hard. And it's a lot easier to not, honestly. It's a lot easier to do what the first part of James talks about here in verse 13 through 15, right? It's a lot easier to look out for yourself and to get yourself to the top and pull those down. Others are down around you, but that's not what we're called to do. And that's we're called to be better than that, and it's harder. And I mean, sometimes the easy thing's not always the right thing, and in this case, the hard thing is the right thing to do. And so, foolishness leads to disorder. No matter where you're at, foolishness will lead to disorder, but wisdom leads to peace and goodness, and that's the what we need to remember. And so, some of the questions we answer, like, are you ask yourself this, like, are you tempted to escalate conflict? Or pass on gossip, or fan the fire of discord? It can be easy to get caught up in that. Now, I've gotten caught up in it, right? Because there's just a little bit of excitement sometimes in that, and we just got to be careful that that's not who we're called to be as Christians. We're called to de-escalate conflict, right? To resolve conflict. We're called to stop gossip. If you see someone gossiping, you stop it. Right? If we see something on fire, like the fire of discord going on, we need to stop it, put it out, throw water on it, throw cold water on it, and put it out and stop it. And so bitter jealousy and selfish ambition are inspired by the devil, right? That is it's demonic. James is saying it's demonic. It's from the devil. That type of behavior is from the devil. And if he gets a foothold in your church, in any of your groups, in your organization, it's going to cause horrible problems. And it kills it. And so we need to make sure that we're careful and not get in it. And so it's easy for us to be drawn into the wrong desires, right? This is human nature. We're drawn to those things. And so we need to be careful on that, because sometimes there'll be well-meaning Christians behind it. And we've got to make sure that we correct that and say, hey, this is not, I understand you mean well, or but we've got to watch this. You've got to watch this. This isn't right. And so seeking God's wisdom in this, right, delivers us from the need to compare ourselves to others and to want what they have, right? If I'm worried about me, if I'm worried about Chad and what's going on in Chad's life, and what the salvation that I'm working myself through, right? And my walk with Christ and all that stuff. If I'm worried about that, I don't have time to focus on everyone else and compare myself to everyone else. Now, it doesn't mean we don't look out for each other. We're called to do that. But when it comes to this kind of stuff, I don't have time to be jealous of the person next to me. And in fact, if the person next to me is doing better than I am, I should be lifting them up and encouraging them. And then they should be in kind turning around and lifting me up, not talking bad about me behind my back or trying to shove you down because they want to be at the top. That, we as Christians, that's worldly behavior, right? That type of behavior is encouraged. Watch any of the reality TV shows, right? Those things are what's pushed. That's what's called for. It's like, hey, they want them to attack each other. They want the one to knock the other one down so the other one can get to the top. I mean, that's what Survivor and a lot of these other TV shows is all about. But that's pure chaos, right? I mean, if that was a real world situation, you think about that being on an island. If that was a real world situation, and you lived in that, no one would survive. You'd all die because it's chaos. It's evil if you want to get down to the basis of it. And so when we're comparing ourselves to others and what we want and what they have, we need to make sure we are focused on God, and we don't have time for that. And so that's what James is calling us for, because he's seen some of the things. I mean, obviously he's writing this because some of this is happening. And so he's trying to put an end to it and saying, hey, as Christians, you're to come together as one. All right, you're not supposed to be jealous of each other. You're not supposed to be bickering and arguing with each other. You're not supposed to be trying to knock each other down. You're supposed to be lifting each other up. Like, that's what unity looks like. And again, it doesn't mean we disagree or we agree with on everything and that everything's perfect and all that stuff. But it's we're all moving in the same goal together. I'm not trying to get myself to the top, right? So I can be better than everyone else. It's we're all trying to get to the top together. We're all trying to get to the same place together, and we're lifting each other up. And then from a leadership perspective, right? It should be, it's not like, look at me, I'm up here over you, I'm a leader over you. It's, no, I'm putting myself at the bottom of the pile, and I'm going to do my best to push you up, right? To make sure you all get up in front of me. And that's what leadership looks like, right? In leadership, there's not time for jealousy. There's not time for gossip and that kind of stuff. If you're truly focused as a leader in the church on growing the church and bringing people to Christ and maturing the church, you're going to be the servant that's at the back of the line doing your best to help push everyone forward and lift everyone else up. And so that's what true wisdom that comes from God looks like. I hope this helps. I hope this is beneficial. Like I said, I learn from them every time I go through these. I really do enjoy studying like this. If you have any questions, comments, you can put them in the notes or in the comment section down there. You can reach out to us directly. But we're more than welcome to help. We encourage any type of communication, even if you disagree with us. I love sometimes I love when people disagree with me in a loving way. Right? If you disagree with something I say or something, or even if I say something wrong, right? Because there's a lot of times I do that. And I like that because then I can correct and say, hey, this is where I was wrong. But I also like the back and forth a little bit of looking at different things from different ways, because we learn from that. If we're open to, learning and saying, getting out that, oh, my ways, true wisdom is not saying I know everything all the time. It's being open to learning and understanding them and saying, hey, I don't have all the answers. And so I'm really trying to find as many of them as I can and work together with others who are doing the same thing. So if you have comments, if you have questions, man, please share them. As always, if you haven't subscribed to our channel, go ahead and do that, because we're going to continue to publish different studies like this, and we'll develop it as we go and do different things, but that way you get the notifications when we publish them to YouTube. But as always, I appreciate everyone for taking the time to watch.